Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session today. My name is Sana Itayim and my colleague Marwa Shille. We are located at the Education USA West Bank office, and we have our special guest, Brenna May, who is representing Bennington College, and she will shortly provide you with information about the liberal arts education and the benefits of studying at a liberal arts college in the US. In the meantime, I'll provide you with information. My colleague Marwa will provide you information, an overview of Education USA and some of our services that we offer either through the West Bank office or the many Education USA advising centers around the world. Marwa?
Thank you so much, Sana. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session. Thank you so much for joining us today. As Sana have mentioned, I will talk to you briefly about Education USA and our services. So Education USA is a US Department of State network of over 430 international advising centers in 175 countries and territories around the world. We work closely, with high school students, high school advisors, as well as parents and university representatives, to offer you the free, accurate, and comprehensive information about US colleges and universities. And of course, our advising centers in the West Bank and Gaza, we offer a wide range of services. So we usually have, in-person or in-center activities for students who are interested, in undergraduate or graduate or short-term degree programs. We have general public sessions, specific topic sessions, individual consultations as well. We also have, outreach sessions where we visit local high schools and universities, and we meet students who are, eager to learn about the U.S. higher education system and the application process. And we also welcome, U.S. university representatives to our country, and they also meet these amazing students. Because of the global pandemic, we have been offering, our services virtually. And so we have been connecting with, students, high school counselors, and university representatives through virtual sessions and webinars, just like today's session. And if we go to the next slide, we can see the main website, which is educationusa.state.gov. You can find so much information on this website about the 5 steps to a study, which is basically your guide if you would like to pursue your studies in the United States. And the first step of the 5 steps to a study, is to research your options. If we can go to the next slide, please, Sana. So the first step is to research your options. There are over 4,000 accredited U.S. higher education institutions. And so they offer, different academic programs, degree programs, social environments and different subjects, for you to study and explore. And so you need to explore your options before you choose your list. And of course, you need to choose the best fit universities based on your interests and goals. And the second step is to finance your studies. It is important for you to understand how much it will cost you to study at a specific institution. And of course, the expenses will include different things like the tuition, the fees, the room and board. You have to pay for your books and supplies. And of course, you will have some personal expenses as well. And so you need to figure out how are you going to cover these costs, and what kind of scholarship opportunities or financial aid opportunities that are available to you at that specific university or college. The third step is to complete your application. You need to understand also and prepare yourself for the general application requirements, and the process, to prepare for these requirements is time consuming, and that's why you need to be organized. You need to be committed to the process so you can prepare yourself for the different application requirements. The fourth step is to apply for a student visa. After you receive admission from a US college or university and you accept their offer as an international student, you need to apply for a student visa so you can actually travel to the United States and hopefully begin your academic program. The fifth and final step is to prepare for your departure. Of course, these steps include, making your travel arrangements. You need to communicate with your respective college or university to finalize any arrangements. And of course, you can attend our pre-departure orientation. Usually during our pre-departure orientation sessions, we invite a visa counselor officer to talk to students about, applying to a student visa or maintaining it, or maintaining your visa status. And so it is also an opportunity for you to meet other students who are actually traveling to the United States, or students who have studied at US universities and colleges as well. And you can find, detailed information about the 5 steps to US study on the Education USA website. And here you can find the different social media platforms and the Education USA website. You can follow us, on Facebook, on Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter as well. If you would like to learn more about our services and to learn more about our upcoming events. And you can definitely email us at ramallah@educationusa.org after today's session if you would like to receive, more information or resources, or learn more about our services. And now I would like to hand it over to our special guest speaker for today's session, Brenna May. She is the Associate Director of International Admissions at Bennington College. Brenna, thank you so much for
Hello.
joining us today.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It's always great to hear about Education USA's services. And thank you to everyone who has joined us or is watching this streamed live somewhere. As was said, my name is Brenna May. I'm the Associate Director of International Admissions at Bennington College, which is a small liberal arts college in the state of Vermont in the United States. And I am going to be talking about Bennington today to give you a sense of what we're all about. But I also wanted to talk a bit about the liberal arts at first. So we can actually go to the next slide. And I'm going to start with just a brief overview of what exactly this term means and why it's so special. This is a very United States centric term. I doubt that you'll hear it in any other countries. And there's always a lot of questions about what is the liberal arts and why should a student choose to study in a liberal arts institution. The first bullet point that we really want you to know is that a liberal arts degree offers foundational knowledge across many different subject areas. And what we mean by that is that rather than having a university degree where you might be studying something rather specific, I'll use engineering for an example. If you're studying engineering at a large university, you're probably only studying engineering or very close to that. You're not studying many different areas. But the liberal arts aims to have you focus in a foundational knowledge across these different subject areas. So you may be taking classes in a wide variety of subjects rather than really specializing in that one area. We can go to the next bullet point. One thing that you'll also find at a liberal arts degree is that you usually don't have to choose your major when you are applying to the college. Again, at these large public universities in the United States, you often have to say what you'd like to study when you're still in high school, when you're applying to that college. You might have to say, I'm applying to the engineering program at this college or the business program. At a liberal arts college, it's much more common to apply to the college in general and then choose your major a little bit later on. This means that you've got some additional flexibility in place. You can take classes on the college campus and then decide what you'd like to study. So if you're not quite sure what you want to study, the liberal arts might be a good fit for you because you've got that additional time built into your schedule. In the next bullet point, we talk a little bit about the outcomes of the liberal arts. We want to focus on, again, rather than that specific knowledge in a specific area, we want you to gain critical thinking, problem solving, communication, and other important, what we call soft skills. This might sound like something maybe you're not interested in right now, but I promise you that every single one of these skills on the screen and many others are used in every single degree that you could possibly have in every career as well. So communication skills, giving presentations like this one, or writing emails to your colleagues or writing reports. All of that is really important. Thinking critically and problem solving when you have an issue that comes up. Those are important things to know in any field that you might pursue. And the liberal arts really has a focus of teaching you those skills throughout a variety of media. And then the final bullet point on this screen is that your major that you have in college at a liberal arts degree might not directly relate to your future career. So you could still become an engineer later in life, even if you don't study engineering at the undergraduate level. That is absolutely okay. I always use myself as an example here. Although I did not attend Bennington, I did attend a liberal arts college. And in college, I was a double major with math and theater, and I also studied the German language. Now I work in education. So all of those might seem like they don't have much to do with each other, but I've really learned a lot of skills from my college career that I very much apply to my work today. My theater degree, for example, is very useful in being comfortable in front of crowds and public speaking. My math degree is very helpful because I work with a lot of data and I need to learn how to manipulate that. And even my German degree, now in the international field, I'm able to speak a little bit of German and communicate with students in that language. So although I did not study education when I was in college, I was still very much able to go into this career path that I've chosen. So it's important to be a little bit flexible about what that might look like, rather than thinking very traditionally about what majors relate to what careers. We can go ahead to the next slide. There are certainly a few myths about the liberal arts that we want to try to dispel. We can show the first bullet point now. The first myth is that the liberal arts means that you're getting an arts degree, that you're going to be studying painting or sculpture or music or something like that. But the fact, and you can display the next bullet point, is that liberal arts is actually short for liberal arts and sciences. So it's been shortened to liberal arts over the years, but the full thing is liberal arts and sciences. And the liberal arts is an educational approach. It has nothing to do with a specific area of knowledge. You could certainly study music or art or painting in the liberal arts, but it does not necessarily have to do with the arts. It's more about those problem-solving, critical thinking skills that you're learning. The next myth that you can display is that liberal arts students don't have a major, that they don't focus in a specific area. Now, every college does approach this a bit differently. You'll see how Bennington approaches it in a few minutes, but the fact is that the liberal arts allows for greater flexibility while still allowing students to pursue specific majors. So we can show the next bullet point now. You will, at the majority of liberal arts colleges, you will have some sort of major or focus, but you're also going to be able to explore other areas as well. So from a liberal arts program, you may very well graduate with a degree in biology or math or something like that, but you're also going to have taken many other subjects as well. And then the final myth that we can show on the screen is that liberal arts students can't get jobs after they graduate. You know, there's a lot of thoughts about that people say, oh, liberal arts students aren't employable, that they don't have the right degree in order to get a job. And I think this is absolutely the opposite of the truth. We can show the final fact up there on the screen. And again, like we've been talking about, the liberal arts really include these skills employers are looking for: writing, public speaking, critical thinking, problem solving. And there have been many studies in recent years showing that the big Fortune 500 companies in the US are actually looking for liberal arts graduates. So rather than looking for people who studied business, for example, in their undergraduate, they're looking for people who know how to do these skills that we've been discussing. So liberal arts students are really very highly employable. Some of them go on to graduate school as well, but many of them go directly into the workforce. So there's a little bit about the liberal arts, and to help you understand exactly what that educational concept means, what it's all about. And now we are going to talk a little bit about Bennington specifically. I love to display this picture because it's just so pretty. But Bennington is a liberal arts college in the state of Vermont in the US. We can go to the next slide. And this slide shows you a bit about where we're located. So this is a zoomed in map of the northeastern part of the United States. Bennington is right there in the middle in Vermont. And then you can also see the states of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New York that border Vermont. So we're right there in the northeastern corner. Bennington is a small college. We have only 750 undergraduate students. So even among these small liberal arts colleges that you may have heard of, we're probably one of the smallest ones. We have students from all over the world. About 16% of our students are international citizens, and they come from over 60 different countries. Within the United States, we have 42 US states represented. 20% of our students identify as domestic students of color, and then about just under 20% of our students are the first generation in their families to go to college. So we have a wide range of different students on campus. If you're looking for that kind of diverse environment, you'll absolutely find that at Bennington. And then before we go on, I also want to point out that we were founded in 1932, so we've been around for a little while. And one of the biggest special things about Bennington is that although we are a liberal arts college, we really have a different approach than a lot of other places. So students get to completely shape their own curriculum without any restrictions. At many colleges, you will choose a major from a list of offerings. At Bennington, you really create your own program. So you don't have to choose from a list. You are able to fully design what type of academic experience you want to have. And we were founded under the idea of combining the academic side of things with the arts. And in the 1930s, this was a pretty revolutionary idea in the United States. It really didn't exist anywhere else. If you wanted to study the arts, you had to go to art school. You had to go to a school for music or a school for painting. But at Bennington, we wanted to combine those ideas. So even now today, there's a strong sense of the arts on campus. You do not need to be an artist to be at Bennington by any means, but there's a lot of accessibility to those fields if that's something you're interested in. So to go into a bit more detail about our academics, and we can go to the next slide now. We call our academics the plan. And we call it that because every student gets to really plan their own academic career. So the list of areas that you're seeing on the screen right now, these are areas that we offer classes in on campus, but these are not majors. Like I said, you really get to completely design your own curriculum at Bennington. So if you are interested in a particular area, say you're interested in the sciences, you really are interested in studying biology or chemistry or even physics, you can take classes in all of those areas, but we're going to ask you to be a bit more introspective about what you'd like to study. Not just biology, but is there a particular question or topic within biology that is really interesting to you? And if so, how can you take classes in other areas as well that relate to that question? So all the things that are on this screen right now are options for you. Most of our students will take classes in several different areas on campus, perhaps many different areas, and they'll really be designing their own curriculum. You can see at the top that we like to refer to it as very self-directed learning with graduate style advising. In graduate school in the US, it often looks like this, where you might have an overall theme to your academics, but you're really choosing what to study yourself. And that is the experience you'll have at Bennington as well. You'll have an advisor who works with you. We want to make sure that you have that support system in place to figure out what you'd like to study. But beyond that, it's truly up to you what you're studying. There's a lot of opportunities for independent research, for collaboration with faculty members. Being a small college, there's lots of access to your faculty members as well. And every student will do some kind of senior work or senior thesis project in their final year. This work is the culmination of your time at Bennington. So if you have a specific question or a topic that you'd really like to explore deeply, your senior work project is likely where you're going to be able to do that. Our students do a lot of really cool things. Some of them are the more traditional senior theses where you're writing a research paper. Some of them are going out and doing field work. Some of them are doing an experiment in the lab. Some of them are doing something related to the arts. Oftentimes it's a combination of those things. So there's really no limitations of your academics at Bennington. This is quite different than what you'll see at other places. Most colleges will have some sort of required classes, or you'll be choosing a major, things like that. It's just not how we operate at Bennington. We truly want you to have that complete flexibility. So there is only one required class throughout your entire time at Bennington. It's an orientation advising course that you take in your first semester. But outside of that, whatever you take is really up to you and the support you get from your faculty advisors. So you can see the options on the screen, but don't feel like these are limitations in any way. So we want to move on to the next screen. The other big factor at Bennington that we want you to know about outside of the academic plan is this concept of fieldwork term. So this is where we want our students to go out into the world and have real experiences that relate to their academics. Fieldwork term happens every winter in January and February, and our students are required to do some kind of internship during this period of time. And it's about 6 or 7 weeks long. So at the end of your Bennington experience, you will have had 4 real internships where you're, again, out in the world, working with a company or doing some kind of work on your own. This is incredibly valuable for students. Many colleges will have you do 1 internship or will offer the opportunity to do internships, but Bennington is one of the few out there that actually requires one for all 4 years. So when you graduate, you'll have a great resume of things that you've tried out already. And these opportunities also give you the option to discover new fields that you might be interested in. Some students come to Bennington with a pretty strong idea of what they'd like to do as their future career, and fieldwork term lets you experiment and lets you try that out and make sure that it's a good fit for you. I'll use being a lawyer, for example. If any of you are interested in being a lawyer, that's a pretty common field to go into. But most students, especially in high school, don't really have any experience with what that looks like on a day-to-day basis. So during fieldwork term at Bennington, you might be able to have an internship at a law office and see how it functions and try to picture yourself there after graduation. If it ends up being exactly what you thought and you're still really excited about it, then you can continue to pursue that field. But if it turns out that it's not what you thought it was going to be, and maybe you'd like to switch trajectories and try out something new, then you have the flexibility to be able to do that as well. We encourage students to get outside their comfort zone, to try something that maybe they've never tried before. All of those opportunities are available in fieldwork term. Students can do fieldwork term all over the world. You can do it in your home country, you can do it in the US, you can do it in another country, and pretty much any kind of company that you can think of is going to have an option for fieldwork term. Our students have opportunities to look at what students have done in the past. So if you're interested again in law, for example, and you'd like to see what our students have done in law in the past, we have lists of what our students have been able to do. But we also encourage you to try out something new that a Bennington student hasn't done before. So in combination with the Bennington academic plan process, fieldwork term is just an excellent opportunity to take control of your academic experience, make sure that you've had the right real world experiences to go into your desired field after graduation. So we can go ahead to the next slide. So now that you've heard a little bit about Bennington, you might be interested in how to apply to Bennington. Hopefully you are. And there's a few things up here that I wanted to go over. At Bennington, we have 2 methods of applying. One is the common application, which you may have heard of before. Many colleges in the United States use it. And there's one application that is sent to all of those different places. Bennington is on that application. We also have our own application called the dimensional application. And this is a great option for students who want to be a bit more creative with what they're submitting to colleges. So the dimensional application essentially allows you to apply with a portfolio rather than a traditional application. Only about 5% of our applicants use this option. So it is for a very specific set of students and in terms of how they'd like to present themselves. But if you're filling out the Common App and you feel like it's just not representing who you are, the Dimensional app could be a good fit for you. So keep that in mind. A couple of other things that you'll see at the bottom, we are test optional for the SAT or the ACT. So if you either have not been able to take those exams or you took them and you don't like your scores, you do not have to submit them to us, and we do not look for them necessarily. If they're not there, it will not be a negative on your application at all. And the only type of test that we do require is some sort of English proficiency test for non-native English speakers. So if you are a native English speaker, you don't have to submit this test. If you have studied in English in your high school for at least 3 years, you don't have to submit the test. But other students who have not done those things will need to submit the TOEFL, the IELTS, the Duolingo English test, or the Pearson test of English. Any of those are absolutely acceptable. The Duolingo test tends to be a little bit easier than some others because you can take it from home. It's also less expensive. And we do actually also offer Duolingo fee waivers. So keep that in mind too. I saw a question pop up in the chat that I will just answer really quickly because it's a good one. And the question is, do you offer application fee waivers to international students? Bennington actually doesn't have an application fee, so you don't have to worry about that at all. You can see at the bottom that we do offer financial aid to international students. Merit scholarships can range from $5,000 to $30,000. These are based on your academics from high school. And then we also have need-based financial aid. So usually students will receive some sort of combination between those two. And although we're not always able to meet 100% of the demonstrated need of every student, we do have very generous financial aid packages. And a typical student will receive about $46,000 US in aid from Bennington every year. That's for international students. So we do try to make Bennington as affordable as we possibly can. In terms of supplements and interviews, which you'll also see up there, we really want to get to know you in this application process. As a liberal arts college, as a small college with not that many students, we want to make sure that we know every student who might be joining our community. So interviews, they are not required by any means, but they are strongly encouraged because it's just a great way for us to get to know you a little bit better. If you're applying from most of the world, you'll probably have an interview with me. So we'll be able to connect via Zoom or some other platform, and we'll just have a casual conversation about you, about your interests, and why you might be interested in attending Bennington. In addition to the interview, we do also welcome any kind of supplemental materials. So if you're someone who has a creative writing portfolio, or you have done some artwork that you'd like to show us, or you've done work in computer science, maybe you built websites or done some coding and you want to share that with us, we absolutely encourage you to do that. Again, in no way is this required, but we want to give you the opportunity to share that additional information with us. So I see we had a couple of questions come in, and I will probably, let me just answer them really quickly because they relate to this slide. We had a question about what is the maximum amount of financial aid that international students can receive. The maximum amount of financial aid would actually be to cover the full tuition and room and board. We do that for some students. We cannot do it for everyone. It depends on your individual financial circumstances, but it is certainly possible to receive essentially a full scholarship to Bennington. And I also received another message about, is there an age limit for applying to your institution? Absolutely not. If you are someone who would like to come to Bennington and maybe you're not traditional college age, but you're still interested, we absolutely encourage you to apply. You'll have to know whether you're a first-year applicant or a transfer applicant. If you've attended college in any other way, then you would be considered a transfer applicant. But if you've never attended college, then you'd be a first-year applicant. And of course, feel free to reach out to me with additional questions about that as well. And then the final question is, how can you prepare yourselves for the interview? This is also a great question. I would actually encourage you to not overly prepare. And the reason that I say that is because sometimes if a student has really rehearsed what they're going to say, it can come across as a little wooden in the interview. I really want to have a conversation with you. So I want to ask you questions and have you answer them just right there so I can learn about you. If you would like to prepare a little bit, I would say that you can expect us to ask about your academic interests, your hobbies, what you like to do in your free time, what your favorite subjects at school are, what your goals are for college, if you have any goals for your future career, all of those types of questions. But I've also had interviews where I've only asked one question. I've just said, tell me about yourself. And then we've just gone from there and we've talked about whatever the student would like to talk about. We really want to keep that pretty flexible, just like what Bennington does with everything else. And we want to make sure that, again, we're getting to know you. So we can move on to the next slide now. So I thought I would end with just a couple of slides about what the US admissions process really looks like and why is it so different from other countries that you'll see. So you can click a couple of times actually. So I'm kind of comparing around the world and in the United States. So the first point is that In many other places around the world outside of the US, the focus in admissions is very much on your academic record. They're going to be looking at your grades from high school, perhaps your grades on your high school leaving exams, those very numerical aspects of your application. In the United States, the focus does include academics, but we're also looking at those other materials that I've been talking about, including your essay, your letters of recommendation, maybe some of those portfolio materials. This is what's referred to as a holistic review process. Many colleges in the US will use it, especially liberal arts colleges. And it just means that while we do care about academics, we also want to know who you are as a person and who you'll be on our college campus. So you can click 2 more times. And the other one is that around the world, supplemental information, as I just mentioned, is usually not considered. It's just not really part of the admissions process. It's really having that focus on academic records. And whereas in the US, personal qualities are very important distinguishing features of an applicant. In the United States, especially I would say at liberal arts colleges, we will see many students who are academically qualified to attend our institutions. I would say most of our applicants are academically qualified. When that's the case, we really need to look for other information that might help us decide who's going to be the best fit at Bennington. So we can go to the next slide. And this is kind of speaking to that, how to distinguish yourself. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. If you could click 3 times, that would be great. So the first one is extracurricular activities. This is one way to distinguish yourself in the admissions process. And a few of the questions that you can ask yourself are your activities unique? And have you described them appropriately? It's sometimes a little frustrating to read a fantastic application and then have a student who's used a whole bunch of acronyms that I don't know what they mean. So if you're using acronyms, make sure that you are spelling them out somewhere or describing them. Or if you're doing an activity that is specific to you, make sure you're giving me some sort of explanation of what that is so I can really understand what you're involved in. The other thing to ask yourself, which you can choose to or not, is do your activities show a theme? This isn't required by any means, but say you're really invested in computer science, for example, you might want to see if your activities are showing that you're also interested in computer science from your activities, not just academically. And we can go to the next bullet point. Another way to distinguish yourself is through letters of recommendation. I would say most institutions will require a letter, at least one letter of recommendation, sometimes more. Bennington requires 3, 1 from a counselor and 2 from your teachers. Letters of recommendation can be very, very helpful to us because these are people who know you very well, who are speaking about you academically, but also your personal qualities and anecdotes about who you are in the classroom. So I really like to read these and they're very, very helpful. So my advice here is to make sure you're asking people to write these letters who actually know you as a person. They should certainly be able to talk about your academics, but they should also be able to talk about your personal qualities and who you are in the classroom, what kind of student you are as well. So we can go to the next bullet point. I would say the thing I get asked about most often is personal essays and how they factor into the admissions process in the United States. Personal essays, usually the one in the common application is the primary one. And this is a really excellent way for us to see, again, who you are, but also to hear your voice. Your essay is one of the only parts of the application that you have complete control over. I mean, your grades, you do have control over them to an extent, but probably not the ones from the past. And then other people are writing the letters of recommendation, so you can't control those. But your personal essay is very much controlled by you, and it's your voice coming through. Could you click 1 more time? Perfect. So for personal essays, the 2 pieces of advice that I give to students is to tell us something unique about you. Tell us something that I wouldn't otherwise have known about you from your application. So if there's something that you're involved in, for example, or an experience you had when you were younger, or anything like that that you can write about, it really lets me see who you are as a person. And then the second piece of advice, of course, is to proofread. Make sure that you're reading through your essay, that it sounds good to you. If you have someone else who can read it over for you, that's sometimes helpful. Make sure it still sounds like you. If you're having a teacher read it for you and they edit it too much, it might end up sounding like your teacher rather than you. So make sure it still sounds like your voice, but you want to make sure there's no silly errors in there that you could have caught. So we can go to the next bullet point. And then there's one more click after that. So demonstrated interest is an idea that some colleges will take into consideration and others will not. It's the idea of how much you've engaged with the college, whether that is virtually through a presentation, maybe it's through an interview. Of course, some students will be able to visit campus, but we know that that is not always possible. So I wouldn't worry about that. Bennington actually does not track demonstrated interest. So this is not something you have to worry about for Bennington, but there are colleges that take this really strongly into consideration. So if they do track demonstrated interest, it just means that they want to see that you've learned about the college in some way. That might mean going to a virtual presentation. It might mean emailing your admission officer with questions. It might mean having an interview. If there's any optional supplements to fill out, that could be part of demonstrated interest. So it's just a good question to ask your colleges to see if they track it, if it's important to them. And then the final bullet point we have up here is additional context. And what I mean by that is that we want to understand if there's anything that's happening in your life or in the world that might have impacted your academics. I would say that one of the most common ones is perhaps that you had a sick family member for a year and your grades dipped because you were at home taking care of them. That is absolutely okay. That's understandable. But if we don't know that that is what happened, we're just going to see a dip in grades and have no explanation for it. So if something like that happened and you're comfortable with sharing just a little bit of context with us, it can be very helpful. It can be as simple as writing in the additional information section of your application that during my sophomore year, I had some things going on at home that didn't allow me to do my best academic work. But as you can see in my junior year, I've done a lot better. So you can say something as simple as that, just to tell us a bit about that you're recognizing that maybe that year wasn't your best work and that you're going to do better in the future. I think that's my last slide. I see that we've gotten a few questions in the chat, so I can go ahead and take some of those now, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
Oh, wonderful. So I got one question about part-time jobs at university. So I will speak for Bennington specifically that we absolutely have jobs on campus for students. So if you are looking to have a job on campus to supplement your tuition, to make a bit of money, that is certainly something you're able to do. I would say that is the case for the majority of US institutions, that you would be able to work on campus. Most student visas have restrictions for students working off campus. So that is something to keep in mind, that working off campus might not be possible, but working on campus does tend to be possible for students. I also got a question about the most popular club at Bennington. And I think that is fantastic that you're looking to take part in different extracurricular activities, because it's a huge part of life at a US college. At Bennington is, as I've been saying, a bit of a unique place, but I would say one of the most popular categories of activities would be the arts in general. So things like music groups, theater groups, visual art groups like painting and ceramics, things like that. There's just lots of different ways to engage with the arts on campus. We also have a lot of engagement with service, so doing things with the local community, volunteering, fundraising, those kinds of things, also very popular at Bennington. I see we had a question about research opportunities at Bennington. Research is also a huge part of the Bennington experience because it is very personal. So every student will do some sort of research project in their final year. That's required of every student. But even before that, you'll certainly be able to engage with research if that's something you're interested in. Our professors are very accessible at Bennington because it is a small college, so you get to know them quite well. So for research, they might be working on a project that they then pull a student into because they can work together on it. So if you're looking to do research, I would say that you'll find it very accessible at Bennington. Another question is about study abroad programs. We absolutely offer study abroad. So if any of you are coming to college in the US and then would like to study in another country during your time in college, you can certainly do that. We have partnership programs all over the world. Some of our students will also use that fieldwork term internship experience as an opportunity to go abroad. So you can go and have your fieldwork term in another country. That is very possible as well. So certainly that is offered at Bennington. Somebody asked about the weather at Bennington, which is a great question. So being in the northeastern part of the United States, we are in a relatively cold climate. So you will certainly see quite a bit of snow, quite a bit of cold temperatures. There is quite a bit of snow on the ground right now. I'm just looking out my window. So you'll be able to experience things like snow, things like skiing, things like snowball fights, that kind of thing on campus. I would say the weather is manageable. And we also have students from, as I said, all over the world. So many students will be in a different weather experience than they're used to. So you won't be alone if that's the case for you. I got a great question as well about how I would describe students at Bennington. I think one of the biggest characteristics that Bennington students share is the willingness to explore and also the creativity that they're bringing to their academics. So, and I don't mean creativity necessarily in the artistic sense. I mean creativity in the way that you're approaching your academics. You'll see a lot of students at Bennington who are combining different academic areas that might not look like they go together, using that creativity to create a new program that no one has ever done before. They're also willing to try those new things. So try out a class that they've never tried before, or do a club that they've never done before, just because it sounds interesting to them. So Bennington students certainly share that curiosity and that creativity. Somebody also asked if we offer virtual sessions. Yes, we definitely do. So you can sign up for virtual sessions right on the Bennington website, and those are really easy to access. Excuse me. So another question is about job opportunities after graduation. That's an awesome question. So after you graduate from Bennington, our students are really successful. And I think a lot of that is because of those internships that you've been able to have during your time in college. Many of those will lead to either networking opportunities or perhaps directly to a job after graduation. So within 10 months of graduation from Bennington, 97% of our students are either studying in a graduate school or they are working full-time in a field of their choosing. So our students, again, are really pretty successful. They are finding the opportunities to pursue what they want to pursue. Somebody asked a question, is Bennington located in a multicultural or multiracial area? That's a really, really excellent question. So in the very beginning, I talked about the makeup of Bennington College itself, where we have students from all over the world, all different backgrounds and walks of life. Vermont in the United States, the state that we're located in, I would say is a little bit less diverse. So the town that we're in is probably less diverse than the college itself. But because the college has all of those different cultures, then it feels pretty comfortable for students on campus. Another great question from one of the participants: are professors accessible outside of class? And that is such a good question, and absolutely they are. Because we're a small institution where students can really access their professors pretty easily, your professors are so willing to work with you, whether it's on a research project, whether it's for extra help on your homework or on your assignments. Maybe it's just to get to know them better and have that personal connection. Professors are very accessible both in the classroom and outside the classroom. Our classes on average are only about 12 to 14 students. So they're very small, and you'll get to know your professors very well. So professors are absolutely willing to work with you outside the classroom as well. Are there any other questions out there?
Brenna, I just have a question about the COVID situation and the health precautions. Any updates you can provide us regarding Bennington College, and in general, what kind of information potential applicants need to be aware of? And are there virtual classes currently being scheduled at your college?
Yes, great question. So, in terms of COVID, for right now, we are fully back on campus. So we're not really doing virtual classes. I think there are a few, very small number of students who are learning virtually now. I know, for example, there was one student who's from the Congo in Africa, and he was not able to get to campus this year, so he is learning virtually. But other than those very small exceptions, everyone is on campus, kind of having a traditional experience. In terms of restrictions that we have in place. We do have a mask mandate right now. So students are wearing masks when they're indoors, when they're in classrooms, when they're in gathering areas. So that is one thing. We are requiring all students and all faculty and staff to be both vaccinated and boosted. So having that third vaccine shot once they are eligible for it. So that is something that we put in place over the summer before our students return for the fall, and is certainly still in place now. So I think those are kind of the big ones. We want to make sure that students are feeling safe, that they are feeling comfortable in their college experience. Bennington, being in a small town, has been able to be a bit more removed from the craziness of the pandemic. Not to say we haven't dealt with it, we absolutely have, but it's very different from being in a large city, for example. So having that idea of being a little bit more remote than other colleges has been pretty helpful to us. So our campus has been pretty safe, especially with those restrictions in place. And actually, that's a great segue to a question that I just got in the chat. Can you talk about the safety measures at the college? That's one of the main things your parents are worried about. That's a completely valid concern. It's a great question to ask. So Bennington is a very, very safe place. And again, that goes to the idea of us being in a smaller town, in a more rural area. There's just fewer people around. So that is one thing to keep in mind. But Bennington also just feels very welcoming and very safe for all students. I've been on campus, of course. I've talked to many students who have. I've never talked to anyone who has felt unsafe on campus, whether that be from just walking around, or whether that be approaching people. It feels like a very safe area. Again, being a smaller town, but also being a smaller community as well. So when you are walking around campus, you won't know every single person, but you will probably know the vast majority of them, being a smaller community. So that also feels a little bit safer. We had a question regarding housing. Is housing available for women only? So Bennington does not have single gender housing, but within your room, you can choose which genders you are most comfortable living with. So if you are only comfortable living with another woman in your room, then you can absolutely indicate that preference. Or if there's a medical or religious reason that you need particular housing, we will certainly work with you on that. But our general housing situation is that students actually do live in houses on campus that we have available to them. There's about 30 to 40 students in each house, and every student has either their own private room, or they'll have a room with one other roommate. And again, that's where your preference of gender will come into play. But then there's also a common space with a kitchen and a living room and those kinds of things. But if there's a particular reason, again, religious, medical, or any other reason that you would need to live in a certain situation, then we would absolutely work with you. That's another benefit of being a smaller college, is we're able to have those individual conversations with students. Another really good question: can you describe a typical weekday for a freshman at Bennington? This is a really good question. I would probably encourage you to join one of our sessions with students, because they'll be able to answer it a lot more specifically than I can. The other thing I'll say, though, is that every student has a very different experience at Bennington, because that academic piece is so flexible. So you might have a few different classes on a weekday. You might be going to a few different clubs. I would say classes generally run between 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. So that's kind of the stretch you'll see classes, but you won't have class that whole time. And it will also change every day. In the afternoon and evening, you're more likely to be going to club meetings, or working on homework, or meeting with professors, maybe doing some independent work. In the evening, you might go back to your house and have dinner with your housemates, or things like that. So there's just a lot of different ways that students can engage with the community. And yes, you can find the links to the virtual sessions on our website. It's right under the admissions tab, so you should be able to find those. any other questions out there?
I think you have answered all of the questions. You had amazing questions. If you would like to say just few words or maybe some tips to students who are just currently, preparing themselves for the application process before we end today's session, that would be great.
Absolutely. I think my biggest piece of advice is just to be yourself in the application. I know that probably is easier to say than to do, and the application process feels or can feel very stressful. I understand that, but we want to get to know who you are as a person and what your ideas are, what your background is, what you'd like to do in the future, any one of those things. And any way that you can let us do that during the application is really helpful. Whether that means writing your essay, letting your voice come through. In your interview, just try to be yourself, let us know what your interests are. I would also say for just a piece of advice is to everything is going to turn out just fine. I think everyone has a perfect college for them and they will find it and it will work out for them. So there are so many options. I think somebody said at the beginning there are about 4,000 different US colleges, and that is a very, very big number. So there's a lot of options out there. And the last thing I'll say is that you're always welcome to reach out to an admission officer, such as myself or anyone who works at other institutions, because we really want to help you. You should never feel like that you are bothering us or that you are sending too many emails. This is our job, is to talk to you and tell you about your options and answer your questions. So if you want to be in touch with us, please feel free to do that. And I encourage anyone here to be in touch with me directly. I don't know if you could put my email back up on the screen. I think it's on that slide with my picture.
Thank you so much, Brenna, for the presentation today and for answering the questions and for the tips. I would add that, students also, they need to begin with the process early because that way they will have more time, to explore the different options that they have, and they will have more time, to prepare themselves for the application process and to connect with different university representatives. And so please do contact us. We are here to help you and share with you the different resources. So thank you so much again, Brenna, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And please do follow us on our social media platforms so you can learn more about our upcoming events. Thank you, everyone.